Right. Call the meeting to order. I want to welcome everybody here. This is not a regular council meeting. This is actually a financial plan public hearing. And so at this public hearing, what is talked about is, of course, the budget for 2018 for the city of Steinbach. And the budget will be presented by Brian Hararchuk, who works for the city as Brian, I don't even know your full title, Corporate Services
Director of Finance.
There, the Director of Finance. Thank you. Brian's our number guy. What this is a culmination of course, is work that's been done by council over quite a number of meetings. It's a culmination of many different decisions that council has made, and we look forward to the presentation of this final document. So, turn it over to Brian, and I'll let you take the podium, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm pleased to be presenting the city's 2018 financial plan to highlight some of the main items that are planned for the upcoming year. The annual budget cycle is a continuous process. For the 2018 budget year, it started early in 2017. Throughout the process, input is provided by staff, management, and council. The financial plan that is being presented today is based on the recommendations of council provided at their final review in November. Some of the highlights for 2018 include a municipal mill rate of 14.09 mils, up 0.16 mils from 2017. When the city reached a population of 15,000, our share of policing costs increased from 70% to 90%. The majority of this increase, or approximately $630,000, affected the 2017 budget year as it was effective April 1st, 2017. The additional revenue for 2018 will cover the final 3 months to bring it to a full year of the increased policing costs. In addition, water rates will remain steady, while the sewer rate will increase by 11% as recently approved by the Public Utilities Board. Residential garbage collection rates will increase by just over 3%. The overall capital program for 2018 is budgeted at $17.2 million, with the majority of this being for the new supplemental water supply system. Other items include replacing the fire rescue truck, road reconstruction on Mackenzie Avenue and Hespler Street, and new sidewalks on Lyndhurst Gate, Brighton Lane, and Park Hill Crescent. Overall, projected revenues for 2018 are just under $29 million. Similar to previous years, property taxes are the city's largest source of revenue, accounting for just over half of the overall revenue amount. Looking a little closer at the property tax revenue, specifically the relationship between property values and taxes, for 2018, there was a property value growth of around 3.3%, including the newly annexed properties. Commercial properties make up about 25% of the total property values in the city, and with the provincial portioning system, a lower portion of residential property values are subject to property tax than commercial property values. As I mentioned earlier, property tax mill rate of 14.09 mils is up 0.16 mils, or just over 1% from 2017. Approximately 51% of budgeted municipal revenues are from property taxes. This year, $14.9 million is to be raised by property taxes, $14.1 million of this via mill rate. The city is also required to collect the education and school taxes on behalf of the province and Hanover School Division. As in previous years, this is projected to make up just over half of the typical residential tax bill. The average market value for a dwelling unit in Steinbach has decreased slightly and is now just under $198,000. As 2018 was a reassessment year, there was a slight negative adjustment of about 1% for residential properties. Based on this and our budgeted municipal mill rate, the average residential city property taxes will remain steady at just over $100 a month. In addition, since the school tax mill rate has decreased approximately 1%, overall residential property taxes for many properties will decrease. Just a couple of examples to clarify this. For an average residential property, i.e. one that saw its assessment decrease by the average amount of approximately 1% and is valued at approximately $200,000, municipal property taxes would increase by less than $3 per year, while overall taxes would decrease by just over $23 per year. Even for a residential property with no change in assessment that is valued at $200,000, the municipal tax increase would amount to approximately $14 per year, while the overall tax bill would increase approximately 60 cents a year. In addition to regular property taxes, supplementary property taxes are levied on new construction for properties that did not receive a regular property tax bill or where there was an addition or improvement to increase the value of the property. This is expected to provide an additional $525,000 in 2018. Federal and provincial operating grants have also been a consistent source of revenue for the city. The provincial per capita tax sharing grant, which now incorporates a couple other grants that were previously separate, will provide around $2.7 million in 2018, while the federal gas tax grant will reach $765,000. One of the main non-tax revenue sources for the city is from user fees. These are fees paid by those who benefit from the service provided. Some services compete with the open market, but a number of the rates are subsidized for programs to be accessible. Overall dollar amount for user fees in the upcoming year is estimated to be just over $5 million. Development in Steinbach was strong in 2017, especially residential development. The estimates for 2018 include issuing permits for 140 dwelling units, with $256,000 in permit fee revenue and $750,000 in capital development fees being collected. Each year, the city applies for a number of federal and provincial grants for various projects. The success of these applications varies from year to year, with applications exceeding available funds. As you can see on the slide, a significant amount has been secured to assist with the funding of the supplemental water supply system. Now we will look at some of the programs that are funded by these revenues. Overall, the expenses are equal to the projected revenues at just under $29 million. Some 2018 programs include waste reduction and recycling at $774,000, support for the JCAP Public Library at just under $400,000, and various other programs and initiatives as listed. One of the largest city expenses is that of our employees. The total labor costs, including benefits for the upcoming year, is budgeted at $8.4 million, or roughly a third of the city's operating budget. Of this total, the Aquatic Center makes up about 20% of the total labor hours, the largest of any city department. Protective services includes 16 RCMP officers, community service officer, currently 39 firefighters and 8 fire vehicles. The total cost of these protective services will be approximately $4.1 million. Transportation services. In 2017, the city reached a total of 117 kilometers of road surface. This has increased fairly substantially in 2018 with the addition of the annexed land. Maintaining these roadways can depend fairly significantly on the weather in any given year, and for 2018 is expected to cost approximately $2.4 million. Solid waste services. We provide both curbside and on-demand pickup services to both residential and commercial properties. The cost of providing these services are expected to reach $2.4 million for the upcoming year, which is funded by the user fees. Our primary recreation facilities include the Aquatic Center, Arena, AD Penner Park, Curling Rink, Soccer Complex, as well as various green space and parks around the city. We continue to get significant use out of all of our available rec facilities, with the expected cost of operating and maintaining these facilities in 2018 to be $3.4 million. Water and wastewater services. Both the number of customers serviced by the water and wastewater utility and the length of the underground infrastructure network continue to grow. The expected cost for the maintenance of this infrastructure and the provision of the utility services is expected to be $3.2 million in 2018. In addition to the typical operating expenses that the city regularly incurs, larger projects also require a significant source of funds. Some of this funding comes from reserve funds that has been saved in previous years, while other projects will require debt funding. Some of the main projects for the upcoming year include equipment replacement, road surface renewal on Mackenzie Avenue and Hessler Street, new sidewalk installations on Lyndhurst Gate, Brighton Lane, and Park Hill Crescent, and of course the supplemental water supply system. The total capital program for the year is expected to cost $17.2 million. The city will periodically issue debt in order to add or renew various infrastructure or facilities throughout the city. Each loan will fund a specific project. In 2018, 3 projects have a debt component: the new water supply system, the fire rescue truck purchase, as well as the Mackenzie Avenue reconstruction. This is expected to create $6.7 million of new debt, while $2.4 million of previously issued debt will be paid off throughout the year. The city continues to use a 5-year amortization term for all of its debt, allowing us to borrow at lower interest rates than if a longer term was used. Our average interest rate for 2018 will be just over 2.5%, while the debt balance at the end of 2018 is expected to be just over $9 million. Payments that are required to be made for previously issued debt will total $2.6 million in 2018. Of this amount, around $126,000 is the interest portion. Funding for these debt payments is raised through property taxation, and for 2018, 2 mills will be required to raise the necessary funds. This equates to just over 14% of the total city tax rate. And finally, a longer-term overview of some of the expected requirements in future years. The 2019 program is currently budgeted at $6.6 million, which includes infrastructure renewal, equipment replacement, and the expansion of the Heritage Cemetery. Beyond that, programs of $5.7 million, $5 million, and $8 million are currently estimated for the following 3 years. That concludes the presentation of the 2018 financial plan. Thank you, members of council. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them now.
Very good. Thank you very much. First, open it up to any questions of council, and then we'll move to the public if there's any questions from the public. Councillor Funk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to our finance director. You are projecting a 0.1 mil increase. What does that translate into dollars?
Overall dollars citywide, I believe that translates into about $150,000. That's revenue, yes.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, now the golf course payment, the first payment.
Yes.
What is that first payment exactly?
Roughly a third of 500,000, 170,000 ballpark.
Sure, go ahead.
If we remove that off the, like that line item, would we then come to a pretty much a balanced budget? No need for,
I believe that agreement has already been signed, so I don't think that's an option.
Thank you. Further questions? Now, this is a public hearing. Are there any questions from the public? If so, I'll ask you to take the podium and state your name and address. Any questions? Mr. Magnuson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We were here, Pat Porter, Acting Living Center, was here about a month ago, asking for a grant in lieu of taxes. Is that happening in this budget?
Thank you. I'll get Mr. Horarchuk to tell us what, when it comes to grants, what is in the...
There have been no change to the grants from 2017.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Magnuson, the reality is that there hasn't been a change in the policy of the grants of the city, and so that will not be included in this budget.
My question is, are you going to be looking at that policy within the next future? I mean, I think council has a responsibility to let serving seniors know, or Pat Porter, what's happening. We haven't heard.
That policy will be reviewed. We review policies on a yearly basis in general, but we will make sure that it's clearly stated to the Pat Porter at the earliest convenience. Mr. Workentine, I'll ask you to just take note that any of the grants that have been requested, that we do send out information as soon as possible in regards to what different organizations will be getting. That may already have been in your book, but I just want to make sure that that's happening. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll then close the public hearing and now turn it back over to Council. Council, we have had this financial plan presented to us. This is a culmination of many decisions that have transpired. Just like to know where you would like to go with this. Councillor Siemens.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Motion to approve. Second by Councillor Penner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like many past budgets presented by the city to council, this financial plan has many good aspects and some not so good items in it. Year over year, city costs do increase, and they need to be managed through our budgeting process. Our mill rate has been set at 14.09, and that is up, as we heard, 0.16 mils, or 1.1%. The new costs are to cover the increased RCMP costs due to our now being a community over 15,000 people. 2 years ago, it was agreed by this council that it would be new tax dollars to cover the additional $800,000 in policing costs. The city now needs to cover 90% of the RCMP costs, which is up from the 70% prior. Policing costs used to cost around $2.6 million, is now at $3.4 million. The increase last year covered roughly $600,000, or approximately 2/3 of the cost, as the contract began on April the 1st, 2017. The remaining $200,000 is part of the increase in our taxes this year. Additional new tax revenues of $125,000, roughly $125,000, will go towards a $250,000 project to install a connection pathway to the new subdivision of Park Hill on the west end of Steinbach. As of January 1st, the city's annexation came into effect. While it will increase our tax base, there are also additional costs. Many of those costs we understand and are part of the budget process. But there are also some additional dollars in the budget to protect us in the unseen. And the city will be responsible now for upwards of 135 kilometers of roadway to maintain. We will spend $13.5 million on new capital projects this year and another $3.7 million on renewal programs. Construction of the new water treatment and storage facilities, which is now under construction on the northwest corner of Steinbach, is one of the largest projects at a cost of $11 million, which half of it will be spent through grants received from the federal, mostly, and some from the provincial governments. And this is to facilitate and secure the future growth of Steinbach. Mackenzie Avenue from number 12 to Lilac will be upgraded to contact. Let me do that again. Mackenzie Avenue from number 12 to Lilac will be upgraded to concrete roadway. Our aquatic center is now close to 20 years old, and with that we need to reinvest some major capital dollars to stay ahead of some of the aging issues that are beginning to show up. Our Make It Black resurfacing project, which has been part of the city for more than 20 years, will continue with resurfacing Hesper Street North. This program is aimed at resurfacing streets before they become too broken down and need complete overhaul, and which is always more costly. That program this year is set at $700,000. The sidewalk program that was put in place 10 years ago will again continue as we put sidewalks into Lyndhurst Gate, Brighton Lane, and connecting piece to Park Hill Crescent. While our sidewalk management program is paid through our frontage levy charged to new building lots, the connectors linking sidewalks are paid for by operating dollars. Main Street continues to see the wear and tear, and it also is over 20 years old, and some of the intersections will again see repairs, similar to last year. There's a new project on the horizon at $850,000. That project was not to be part of this year's budget, and that is Elmdale Drain from Millwork to Acres. That will also be rebuilt. The last number of years, Council has pulled that project out of the budget. Council's direction to administration was to take the project out and only initiate it if by development in that area. So that has now been put back in the budget. Those costs will come from current reserves. The end result is that Steinbach will see its streets under construction in many different places this summer. Our valued employees make up 33% of our operating budget, with 280,000 FTE labor hours at a cost of $8.4 million. Besides wages, ongoing training and staff safe work programs provide a safe work environment for staff and the public as they work in and around us, keeping our water, streets, and all the other amenities in great shape. We will be spending $1.8 million on equipment replacement, including fire truck, loaders, residential garbage truck, and an ice resurfacer. This budget has many parts to it, including how we manage our debt, which we will be at $9.2 million at year's end. The city will add $6.7 million of new debt, but will also pay off $2.4 million. We are currently paying an average interest rate of 2.5% on our debt, and the city continues with the policy of a 5-year amortization terms on all its debt. With its many pieces, administration has done a good job putting together a budget that meets many of the needs for Steinbach's current requirements and future growth needs. And for all those reasons, I put the motion forward to approve this budget as it was presented.
Thank you, Councillor Siemens. Councillor Penner.
Yes, I don't know that I have much to add, but I would like to say that I appreciate the efforts of the administration and our employees to assist council in making a lot of these decisions. One thing we do know that as a council, we do not always fully understand the daily impacts that employees face, that administration face to make the city run efficiently. And I want to say thank you to them for that input. As well, council works hard to figure out where the dollars need to go, where the priorities are, and what pressures are facing us as a city as we have grown. So I want to say thank you for that help also from administration. Just to echo some of Councillor Siemens' comments, one thing that I'm very happy to see is our debt payments are lower this year. Our debt management is very adequate and well within the guidelines, and our reserves are still in a healthy way. So overall, I think the city's in good hands.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Funk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I will not be supporting this motion to accept, or the motion to accept the budget, and these are my reasons. The biggest reason for me not supporting the budget is because of the decision to purchase land from the Flying Golf Course. It seems peculiar that a tax increase is almost exactly equal to the payment due to the golf course, even though other councillors are placing the blame on other expenses such as our increase to our SMP contract. I think we should call this what it is. It's a bailout, and the worst thing about it is the process. We've had numerous closed-door meetings, and even after a motion was brought forward to have the golf course present in a public meeting, it was voted down 4-3. Not going public kept the real numbers hidden from the public, and real numbers are very important in making spending decisions. Manipulating the payment schedule from 5 payments to 3 to avoid further public scrutiny. Acting like this destroys the integrity of our grant process. If we compare this to the same request made by the Pat Porter Center, on one hand, we had an organization, our seniors, that followed the right process, made public requests, and to date have merely received a pat on the back. This could lead one to believe that closed-door meetings and secret land deals are the way to get something done. This is not how things are supposed to be, especially if we want the people of Steinbach to have confidence in our grant process. When I was elected to council, I had a simple approach. Public business should be done in public, and that's how we should operate. And for most of the part, I think we do, except for backroom deals like this one. Last year, I voted against the budget also because of the massively inflated cost of the Performing Arts Center. Not because I didn't think it'd be nice to have one, but there too, it was because of the process. Closed meetings, numbers kept from the community until the big $24 million price tag was arrived on. I just never felt that we were showing all the cards, so to speak. In today's world, our values are being eroded little by little. One choice at a time. It would be so easy to hide. It would be so easy not to stand up, just like this budget. It would be easy to stay silent and just let the bailout slide by. All we have to do is make everyone in Steinbach pay just a little more. But no, this has to stop. Stop taking our hardworking money from our hardworking residents, giving to the wealthy. I believe that if a tax increase is necessary, it should be for a project or a need in the community that the majority of Steinbach can support or find value in. That would be a tax increase I could support. I know budgets are balancing acts, and that there's good and bad in all budgets. But I feel that voting for this budget says that I agree with this golf course bailout and its process, and for these reasons, I will not support the budget.
Further discussion? Anything further from council? Councillor Fair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I hope we're not oblivious to the fact that there are many components of this that comprise this budget. We could all seek out $150,000 expenditures that make up this budget that we could pull out in order to make a balanced budget without having any increases. And I think we've heard a lot from other members of council regarding the land deal that we made with the Flying Golf Course. Land deals are always done in camera. They've always done behind closed doors. You cannot make a land deal in the public eye. It just would never work. I still stand by the decision that we made in order to purchase that property. We do purchase property from time to time when we feel it's in the best interest of the city. With the budget that we have, I find it hard to believe that we have people who support and endorse pet projects such as council has for the past 8 years that I've served on this council. Every fall, we determine a $50,000 project that we feel may benefit the city. These are small projects, $50,000 a year. When you add them all up, that's $400,000. That's almost enough to buy the golf course. Those projects are things that are kind of optional, I would say. And yet, the people that are not in support of this supported those projects. And so I have a little bit of a problem with that. Sadly, I kind of think, I'm starting to think it's a political issue. The deal was made. Some of this council didn't like it. Some did. At the end of the day, we won't always agree, and if we did, we would not all need to be here. So now I'm going to quote George Cuff, the author of many manuals and publications about municipal politics and leadership. When an issue has been put to a vote, and it didn't turn out the way that you wanted it, that happens. Give it your best shot before the vote, and then after the vote has been cast, the issue is dead. and I'm going to quote him here, like when a horse is dead, it's time to dismount. So I think it's time that we move on and approve the budget.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Schweitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a few comments I want to make. I'm not in voting in favor of the budget. There's a lot of numbers being tossed around here, and we're hearing a lot about, that this mill rate increase is because of the RCMP, and I just want to quote from a Steinbach online story that just recently appeared from yourself, Mr. Mayor. There's saying that this money is going to be raised for the mill rate increase, and those monies are directly going towards the increase in costs for policing. Part of the contract with the federal government is that we move from 70% to 90% of the costs of RCMP in our community. If we're happy with the RCMP, we have to pay, sorry, wait a second. I was quoting from last year's story. Sorry, let me just switch to yesterday's, because that was about last year's budget and last year's tax increase. Let's look at this year's comments. Inflation eats away at what we can do, but also we had the change when it comes to RCMP, going from paying for 70% of the cost to 90%. That 20% increase in our RCMP budget is significant, and we'll have to reflect that somehow. Well, isn't that interesting? The exact same reason given for a tax increase last year, which it was actually legitimate last year because that's when we had the bulk of the RCMP increase. But now we're going to use the exact same talking points, same lines, and let's recycle it again because it worked last year, and last year it was actually legitimate, so now we're going to piggyback. And we're going to say, well, because there was a couple months in the year that hadn't, that we'd done 3/4 of the year last year, therefore this has to be covered as under a tax increase this year. I remember those discussions very well. There was never an intent, any of that, and certainly no one here said at last year's public budget hearing that, well, this increase only covers 75% of that increase, and the rest of it, there will be a mill increase next year. There was no statement of that sort at all. It was simply stated that last year's tax increase would cover the extra RCMP costs. And where was the extra amount for the RCMP cost to come from? It was to come from the extra revenues that the city normally takes in the given year. That was absolutely the intent. That what was planned. And it actually would have balanced out just perfectly, except council decided to make a land purchase, sort of, a grant, whatever we want to call it, with the golf course, $500,000, and then instead of doing it over 5 years, had to do it over 3 years because we had to avoid that additional amount of public scrutiny that could potentially come. So now it's over 3 years, and all of a sudden it's $167,000 that we have to pay this year out of the general operating budget going to the golf course. Now, we can help with my math here. If you subtract $167,000 from this budget, you would not have the 0.16 mill rate increase. It would disappear. Now, yes, that was voted on a number of months ago. Does that therefore mean that, well, those of us who are opposed to it therefore need to just sit back quietly and accept the whole budget? No. An issue is not dead when you have a budget before us that is very much alive and well, and where that land purchase, as it's called, a land purchase so that we can lease back land for them to continue on for the next number of years, so that we have this land purchase, and it's part of this budget. And so it wasn't, of course, any part of the presentation. I mean, why would we put the biggest land purchase why would we put the biggest land purchase / grant in the public presentation? Why would we bother doing that? Does the public really need to know that during a public presentation? No. It's easier just to sort of slide it in and sort of go, well, it's because we're just going to say it's because of the RCMP increase. Councillor Farr's comments about land deals are always done in camera, for typical land deals where we're talking about buying a strategic property, a house or, a property where, the land value could change, those things are negotiated initially behind closed doors. However, we've never had a land deal before where it's actually a grant request first, and then when that gets turned down, well, now we're going to switch it around and we're going to make it a land deal. And as if we're worried the city was worried that someone else was going to come along and snatch up that valuable golf course land and lease it back to them for 64 years at $1 a year. Seriously, you've got to be kidding me. If that had been made public and had been presented in a clear public meeting, I can assure everyone here there was no private developer that was likely rushing forward saying, I would love to buy that property. I would love to hold on to it for the next 64 years and lease it back for $1 a year because in 64 years, I just might be able to sell it and actually make some money off it. So So let's be serious here. Yes, we do negotiate land deals in camera when it's actually a normal land deal, not when it's this weird, convoluted grant request / land deal sort of just slidden into here. So we can play numbers with the games, we can repeat the argument, we can use the talking points from last year about the RCMP cost, da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, it worked last year, but it doesn't work this year because the tax increase for last year already covered that, and the small amount of extra that was sort of intended for this was to come from the growth revenues, and it would have balanced out just fine if we hadn't gone on that spending spree to give the golf course $500,000. So no, I'm not going to vote for the budget. I'm not interested in helping sell a budget that hides a grant that was negotiated behind closed doors.
Further discussion from council. Councillor Penny.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. There are many good things in this budget. Thank you to city staff for how well they run our city and put this together. I concur with the other Councillor Penner's comments. And I recognize that in every budget there are things we like and things we don't like. And at the end of the day, sometimes we just have to agree to disagree. And sometimes we disagree and move forward. There's a variety of ways we can approach this. One of the challenges with the golf course purchase, as Councillor Fair was mentioning, is the comment was something like, I think this is just political, basically saying it's sour grapes. However, the challenge is when it's set up the way it is, we don't have an opportunity to get feedback from the public. When we have to, the first time the public hears about it is the day we have to vote on it. So that makes it difficult. So in terms of not being agreeable, if we don't support this budget, I don't agree with that comment because that was presented and voted on. And then we got public feedback. So really today is the day of representing the people, at least the people who've spoken to me, where they don't support this idea. This is the vote now where we have heard from the public, and now we can vote the way we feel the public has given us feedback on. And I've overwhelmingly heard that people are not in support of this. It has, as Councillor Funk mentioned, it has undermined the grants process. I've heard countless times, you need to tell me you can give $500,000 to the golf course, but you can't give $10,000 to YFC or 55 plus. So really, they're right. How can we justify that? So I feel like the whole process that we established years ago has now been undermined by this. So I mean, it's semantics. If it's because of RCMP or because of sidewalks, we can really pick any line out of the budget and say the tax increases for this. We can all pick a different one. It doesn't matter. But for me, it's actually irrelevant if there's a tax increase or not this year. I wouldn't support the budget with this in it just because it is totally now compromise the integrity of the grants process. So I will not support the motion because of that, and not because of sour grapes, but it's because I've been listening to the people of Steinbach, and I feel I'm representing what they want.
Further discussion? Anything in closing? Councillor Siemens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. That's interesting comments overall. And the one thing about the golf course is there's a lot of emotions attached to those discussions and those decisions. And that affects all of us. But it is a land deal, after all. And it is the budget increase, as I stated earlier. This council decided that all new costs of RCMP would come out of taxation, out of new dollars. That's where the decision was. But this budget has many of the items requested by council and by administration. It covers many of the growth items that are needed to be covered in projects, but also staffing and upgrades to our facilities and structures. But not everything can be in each budget. There are items that are not in this budget, like additional grant funds for seniors or youth programs that play a vital role in the quality of Steinbach. I'd like to see more on pathways, that's a personal thing, and bike paths, connecting different parts of Steinbach, like a pathway to Southland Estates. This budget sees no mention of a new recreation or arts facility, which is so desperately needed in our community. This budget will move Steinbach forward, and it will remind many people driving through and around our community this summer that summer season is construction season in Steinbach, and they'll be required to slow down at all places. I can't speak off the top of my head like others can and all that, but for me, this budget does move our community forward, and I think we should be supporting this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Siemens. Before I call for the vote, I just want to acknowledge Council's work on this. Obviously, these aren't easy discussions. The reality of the process in the municipal world is it's about compromise. It's about compromise, it's about many decisions and making decisions together, even when we have differing visions of what we see on certain situations. Our job as municipal officials is to find compromise, and that's what this budget does. Doesn't mean that we all have to vote for it, but it means that we all have to work towards a good budget. This is a very good budget. It not only renews our infrastructure, it works on our underground infrastructure, works on our sidewalk infrastructure, it enhances the pavement program. It also has a huge component of it that involves the growth of our city, and that is the secondary water treatment facility that we've all worked very hard at trying to make sure that we have other funds available from other levels of government. Very important. We're here to look at the big picture, not the small picture. And so we can all look at the small picture and pick up little things or larger things in this that are missing in this budget that we wish were there or weren't there. Councillor Siemens has identified a few of them. I could identify a few of my own. We all can identify some of them that we'd say, I kind of wish that wasn't there, or I voted against that. But you know what? In the bigger picture, our responsibility is to look and respond as a group that wants to find compromise and look at the big picture when it comes to the growth and the future of our city. That's what this budget, this document does. There are council members around this table who have chosen to find one thing in this budget they don't like, and that makes them decide not to vote for it. It's fine. But our job as council members is to find compromise. And from what I'm hearing here today is that the majority has. So appreciate that. Thank you. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mr. Warkentine, do you need any additional resolutions at this time?
Not with this particular matter.
Okay, thank you. All right, then I will adjourn.